When you hear the letters ECW, you think of Extreme Championship Wrestling. And who are the superstars that you remember? You remember Rob Van Dam. You remember Sandman, Tommy Dreamer, Sabu, Taz, the Dudley Boys. Just incredible. But the one name that I'm sure everybody will also remember as well, probably one of the most controversial figures in that federation, that wrestling organization, was New Jack. He was born Jerome Young, and right away, his trainer, Ray Candy, told him, "You got to come up with a character as no one has ever seen before." He saw the movie New Jack City, and he thought New Jack. New Jack, that right there is a name that'll, you know, resonate. It'll be remembered. That's a unique name, and he got that name, and he went by the name, and he's proceeded to be very, very violent. Also using a lot of terms that a lot of people are iffy about using. The N word, talking about white people. And he would incite crowds. He would have people actually yelling that racial epithet to him. And it would only fuel him. It would make him want to beat the living crap out of whomever he was wrestling. There was wrestling matches that people kept saying the N word. Keep saying it. Keep saying it. I'm going to keep beating the hell out of this guy. He didn't give a fuck. That's what he says. Quote New Jack. A mass transit incident. Mass transit. I thought that was like he had an incident on a mass transit, but that was the name of this 23-year-old. Well, he was actually a 17-year-old kid. He actually lied to Paul Heyman, who at that time was known as Paulie. He was known as Paulie Dangerously in WCW. But he was the one that came up with and pretty much did everything, ran everything in ECW. Lied to him, lied to everybody. So he goes in there, and Paulie doesn't know that he's underage. And then he's in the ring with New Jack, who didn't know as well, and he proceeds to beat the hell out of him. The kid tells him, "Hey, cut me open." So he goes, "Okay." He tries to cut him first, then nothing. Then he just slices him. And apparently, he went through a lot of nerves and a lot of stuff like that because he started bleeding. He needed 50 stitches, and later on, he said he had no feeling in that area. And unfortunately, not too long after that, he passed away of a complication from gastric bypass surgery. And not only that, but then you had a situation he had with this one wrestler, and he was in the ring with him, and the guy was pretty much trying to really, really like not lay off on New Jack, and he was really, really taking it to him. And New Jack was like, "Man, this guy really wants to take it to me, huh?" And so he said that he had like a Wolverine type of a glove with three, you know, sharp blades on them, but one broke off and it was in his pocket. And you see him when he gets pushed back to the ropes, he takes it out and he starts stabbing him. And then they fall to the floor, he's stabbing him some more. And the funny thing is that he wrestled this guy. What was his name? Hunter Red or something like that. I think his name was Hunter Red. And he was arrested, New Jack. And then the guy, and he was gonna definitely face some charges and do some time. He was facing 15 years for aggravated assault and stuff like that. And the wrestler guy goes up to him and goes, "Hey man, let's do this. Let's make this an angle. I will drop the charges and then let's go and take it on the road," kind of a thing. And make it that I'm fine. I'm looking for New Jack and stuff. And then what happens is that New Jack ends up getting out of jail, and instead of doing a program with the guy, he just leaves town. pretty much skipping town, if you will. I mean, the guy dropped the charges, so he's not like he's evading the authorities or anything. And he did that, and then there was that other incident where what was the name of that? What was the name of that guy? And unfortunately, guy, this is an old man, 70 years old, you know, and known as Indian Joe. And he was known as the toughest guy. You could take all kinds of punishment. And the thing about it though is that when he wrestled, what do you call it? When he wrestled New Jack didn't know that he was gonna no sell because he's gonna no sell because he's gonna he has to show that the punches and everything will have no effect. And then what happened was that he kept beating on him, nothing happening, beating on, nothing happening, and then everybody's just throwing N words at him. And he said, "Okay, you guys want to keep saying that, so you're gonna keep pissing me off, and I'm gonna beat this guy even more." And he beat this poor old man to a bloody pulp. He had this bat that had like barbed wire wrapped around it, and he starts beating on him with it. You see him on the footage when I'm watching this episode of Dark Side of the Ring. And he's bleeding, man. It's like fucking violent. I don't, you just think to yourself like this guy is a piece of crap, man. Like the hell's his problem? But it's like every time when he would talk, New Jack now being interviewed, it's just like saying, hey, it's part of the damn show. It's part of that. You knew what you were getting into when you came in. Don't get mad at me, kind of a thing. Don't blame me. And I've never seen a guy wrestle. I've seen just snippets here and snippets there. I've never watched any of his matches. But his like the whole thing of you say that his reputation precedes him. Exactly, it's like that. Where I can remember hearing people talk about him, seeing snippets here and snippets there. I've seen especially this one last thing I'm gonna talk about, and that is this guy named Vic Grimes, who he wrestled, and you talk about just a whole oh my god or a holy f moment, holy fuck moment. You're on a scaffold, and he went to throw him off, and he's like, oh, I don't know about this, man. I don't know about this New Jack, and New Jack's pretty much saying you're going over. And what happens when he threw him over, and he kind of did a little flipping move or something. What happens is he ends up falling down and actually falling on New Jack and pretty much landing on the side of his head, and it caused loss of vision, concussion, and he says to this day he has headaches because of that. And this is a big boy, Vic Grimes was got to be at least 400 some odd pounds. He's a big guy, and there's a guy that I used to work with that actually says that he's a friend of his, and he says he remembers that. He says he, and I'm just like going, to be able to sit down with that guy and talk to him and pretty much ask him, what was it like wrestling that guy, Luckily, that guy didn't die. And then there's another incident where you're thinking, he was lucky he didn't die then too. It was like another match. It was pretty much New Jack now looking to get revenge because of what happened with that accident. And he brought a taser. Vic Grimes didn't know about it, and he ends up tasing him. And then this crazy thing, man, he says to New Jack, man, I can't feel my legs. And then New Jack says, nah, it don't matter. You're not going to need those legs. And he threw him. And you see him falling off of that, how high they were off, to the ring. He lands on one leg and bounces back up and falls hard again. And he said that the only thing he had was a torn ankle. Like that's the extent of that thing. I'm surprised that his leg didn't snap in half. But they say that the guy was pretty tough, the Vic Grimes guy. So it's like maybe that's the reason why. It's because he's a tough guy. He's built in a way that he's not going to break easily. But you see him bounce, like it's just like you're taking a damn basketball, and the way he bounces like a basketball. He just bounced back up. You see, it's so. Oh my god! It's just like it makes you want to cringe because the way he landed on that one leg and he bounced up and flipped around and then landed back on the ring. And the guy only came out with an ankle injury. He didn't break his leg or anything. But that's what New Jack was all about. Pure violence. The guy was deemed a liability for a lot of promotions. They didn't want to hire him. Started off in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, a promotion that was founded by Jim Cornette. Then ECW gets wind of him, they hire him. Causes all the mayhem that I was talking about. And then it was in the independent circuit that he did what he did to Indian Joe and to Rick Grimes. And this guy, you know that he definitely wasn't going to be hired by WWE. So much of a liability. Probably Vince McMahon's going to say, no, man, this guy is probably going to kill one of our guys. Why am I going to hire him? I mean, exactly. He probably wouldn't have listened to Vince McMahon. He probably wouldn't have listened to creative. He probably wouldn't have lasted a few months there in WWE, even if they hired him, even if he decided to go over. And there's a guy who was probably was a promoter, and actually a promoter of that. When my match when he stabbed that guy, I think it was known as the place was. I think it was the promotion was known as Thunder Wrestling. And the guy was talking about how he was very charismatic. He slept over his. New Jack slept over his house, stayed over his house, and he was very charismatic, very funny. And then I'm thinking that he probably, if he went to WWE and he actually got rid of that whole violent nature of him, stuff like that, maybe he would have been, PG friendly or whatever. But then again, if he went over, he would have been part of the Attitude Era. He definitely would have fit if he had gone over, battling for the hardcore title, maybe bringing over his old tag team partner and because they're known as the Gangsters, and ECW and or just Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and they would have had probably a renewed rivalry with the Dudley Boys, and they probably would have been multi-time tag champions. I mean, who would have known? But probably one of the few guys that, as notorious as he is and as well known as he is, and there was in WWE. There's a lot of wrestlers that are like that, but many of them usually would go over there and at least have one stint in the promotion. But the guy really was quite an anomaly when it comes to wrestling, when it comes to the style that he brought to. I mean, he was ECW before he even went to ACW. He fit right in when he went to ECW, and he was talking about how the reason why he's the way he is. He said this during the episode. He said that talked about how his father stabbed his mom right in front of him and the rest of the family 5 times, and then when she tried to leave with the kids, she shot her in the leg, and so he thought that upbringing of his, he's like going, why you see why I'm crazy? You see why, he says that why at any moment I'll snap. But I don't know what to think about him. I mean, am I a fan? Not really, because I never really followed the guy. I'm more of a fan of the ones from ECW that I mentioned earlier. A lot of them are still involved in wrestling. Taz is over in AEW, and Rob Van Dam was an Impact, and I don't know if he's there no more. He's floating around, and Sandman. I don't know if he's still wrestling. Maybe once in a while. Sabu is still wrestling. I think I don't know where he's at now, but Dudley Boys. I mean, Devon is a backstage agent in WWE, and Bubba Ray is in Ring of Honor. So they're all still floating around, but New Jack is still wrestling too. He's retired, I don't know how many times, but he's back in the independent promotion. So it's just a lot of the guys, man. A lot of the guys who were the big stars in ECW are still around. They're still ticking, which is very unheard of in wrestling nowadays, where a lot of these guys are dying. We're losing a lot of our favorite wrestlers growing up and stuff. But this was, Dark Side of the Ring, season 2, episode 3. Episode 1 and 2 were the first and second part of the Chris Benoit um, thing, and I did that one actually first, because I thought it was a documentary, but then I found out that it was part of a series. So you'll find that on my channel. This was episode 3, like I said, the life and crimes of New Jack. And like I said, this guy was quite a character, and a guy who still to this day has the same attitude. He don't give a fuck. He's like, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do, and I don't care what anybody thinks, and that's how he carries himself. So the guy is fortunate he hasn't served time. I mean, maybe he has, but for the things he did in this documentary that it showed, he should have at least served about 10, 15 years at least. He dodged a bullet with that one guy, that Hunter Red guy says, "Oh, I'll bail you out. I mean, not bail you out, but I'll drop the charges if you do a program with me, Angle." And then New Jack just skips town. It's like, I guess a clever way. And he's smart. Says, "No, I'm not gonna do that thing with you. I'm just gonna skip town. You drop charges. Hey, I got nothing on me. I'm gone." But that was a very good episode, though. So far, so good. Not one episode that I did not like. All good episodes so far. And yeah, that's my video. And thanks for stopping by. And I appreciate your support for those of you who watch my videos and those who have been subscribing. I really do appreciate it. And well, that's that. And in closing, and as always, take care. Please remember to subscribe, click like, and click the bell icon for all notifications on this channel.